Once upon a time, there was a man named Louis, who lived in a small village. He had lived with his wife, Elizabeth, and 2 children, John and Sophia. Louis had a small farm where he grew wheat. His little brother Jonathan lived next door with his wife, Emma, and their 2 kids, Mike and Lily. Jonathan wasn't like Louis. He didn't work hard and often made bad decisions. He and his family felt jealous of Louis and his family. But Lily wasn't like them. Lily loved spending time with her Uncle Louis, her Aunt Elizabeth, and her cousins. Even though Louis knew his brother and his family were jealous of him, he didn't stop loving them. One morning, Louis woke up. He noticed Elizabeth was still fast asleep. He gently shook her shoulder.
Elizabeth, it's time to wake up.
Elizabeth got up quickly and hurried to the kitchen. She made tea. Then she made an omelet. She toasted slices of bread, prepared a bowl of warm porridge, and set everything on the table. Soon, John and Sophia walked into the kitchen. They were prepared for school.
Good morning, Mom.
Good morning, Elizabeth replied with a smile, pouring tea for Louis, who had just joined them at the table. Louis looked at John.
John, did you study for your geography test?
He asked. John grinned confidently.
Yes, Dad. I even revised last night before bed.
That's my boy,
Louis said proudly. Elizabeth placed the omelet on their plates. Eat well, dear. After breakfast, the kids grabbed their bags and left. After them, Louis headed to the farm. Soon, Louis reached the farm. His workers arrived shortly after. He grabbed a rake and started removing the weeds with his workers. After that, he watered the crops with his servants.
make sure the crops get enough water,
he said. One Sunday, Louis was cooking Sophia's favorite lasagna, while Elizabeth was washing the dishes. Louis said,
Elizabeth, I want to grow cotton next time. I love it.
Elizabeth raised an eyebrow and said, You should learn first. Louis smiled.
Don't worry. I'm already learning from Harry.
Elizabeth smiled. Well, that's good then. Just then Sophia came. Dad, is it ready? Louis laughed.
Yes, my dear. But first, take some to your uncle. Mike and Lily will love it.
Sophia took the lasagna to their uncle's house. When she came back, the family sat down to enjoy the lasagna. "You are a great chef, Dad," Sophia said with a smile. John laughed.
Dad, she is buttering you.
Louis laughed. One day, while the servants watered the crops, Louis walked to Harry's farm. Harry greeted him and showed him his cotton crops.
"Since you are going to grow cotton next time, keep in mind,"
Harry said, pointing to the field.
"First, make sure the soil is rich in nutrients. Water it regularly, but don't overdo it."
Louis nodded, listening carefully. Then he thanked Harry and returned his field. Jonathan walked into Louis' field, looking at the crops. Louis smiled.
We will harvest soon. May God bless us.
"Yes, brother,"
Jonathan replied. 2 weeks later, they started harvesting. Louis earned a good profit, but Jonathan didn't make as much. Jonathan was jealous of Louis's good earnings. Louis had started growing cotton. After a few days, seedlings began to appear. One day, Jonathan came to visit. As he saw seedlings, he asked,
"Brother Louis, what are these?"
Louis smiled and replied,
I'm growing cotton.
Jonathan raised an eyebrow.
"But you have no experience."
Louis laughed.
I have learned from Harry. Don't worry.
Jonathan nodded and returned to his field. At dinner, Jonathan laughed.
"Brother Louis is growing cotton now. He will regret it."
Mike and Emma laughed. Mike teased,
Looks like we will see him struggle.
Emma said,
Maybe he learned from someone.
Jonathan took soup in his bowl and said,
"Yes. He said this. But I didn't think he would do well."
Lily softly said,
Papa. He will. I'm sure.
Emma scolded,
Lily. Focus on your food.
Mike just stared at her. Soon harvest time came. Louis made a lot of money. Jonathan also decided to grow cotton. One night, Lily came to Louis's house. She was so worried.
Uncle.
She said,
Dad decided to grow cotton this time. He is going to buy cotton seeds tomorrow.
Louis and Elizabeth were worried. Louis immediately went to Jonathan's house.
Jonathan, you don't know cotton farming,
He said. Jonathan said,
You can. Why can't I?
Louis smiled.
I learned first. You need to learn too.
But Jonathan didn't listen. He grew cotton. He didn't know how to take care of it. And the cotton didn't grow well. When harvest time came, he couldn't make enough money. Jonathan was very sad. Emma and the kids were also very sad. Louis went with Elizabeth and the kids.
Sophia, John, go show Mike and Lily your new storybooks.
Louis said. They went. Jonathan said,
I can't afford to buy seeds or fertilizer.
Louis sighed.
You didn't listen to my advice. Now, compose yourself. I will help you.
Jonathan nodded. Louis helped Jonathan buy wheat seeds and fertilizer. While Louis bought pumpkin seeds for himself, he decided to grow pumpkins. One day, Jonathan came and saw the pumpkin plants growing. That night, Jonathan told Emma,
Brother is growing pumpkins.
Emma laughed.
I don't think he will make much money.
Mike laughed too. Lily felt bad but stayed quiet. Soon, the pumpkins grew very well. But one grew bigger than they had ever seen before. Louis and Elizabeth were overjoyed. John and Sophia jumped with excitement. Jonathan, along with Mike and Lily, came to see it. Lily smiled wide. But Jonathan and Mike tried to hide their jealousy.
You will make a big profit from this one,
Jonathan said. Louis smiled.
No. I'm going to gift it to the king.
The next day, the pumpkin was carefully loaded into a cart by the servants. And they traveled to the palace. Louis presented the pumpkin to the king. The king turned to his minister.
Give him a gold bag.
The minister handed over the gold bag. And Louis returned home happily. John and Sophia were very happy. And Elizabeth smiled. After hearing about the gold bag, Jonathan decided to sell his farm and gift an elephant to the king. Lily told Louis about his plan. Louis said,
Jonathan, don't sell your farm. It's your livelihood.
But Jonathan didn't listen and sold the farm. He bought an elephant and took it to the royal court. He handed the elephant to the royal guards and entered.
Your Majesty, I want to gift the elephant that stood outside. Please accept it.
Jonathan said. The king nodded.
Okay. I will reward you in a few days. You may go now.
Jonathan returned home happily. 2 days later, the king ordered his minister.
Go to Jonathan's village and find out the truth. I have doubts.
The minister headed to Jonathan's village. When he reached Jonathan's gate, he saw Lewis.
I am Jonathan's brother.
Lewis explained. The minister went back to the palace and reported.
Your Majesty, Lewis is Jonathan's brother. Jonathan did this for the gold bag.
The king smiled.
I suspected something was fishy. Now, call Jonathan.
The minister delivered the message, and Jonathan arrived at the palace. The king said,
You did all of this for the gold. You won't receive anything. You may leave.
Jonathan returned home feeling defeated. He had nothing left. As he entered, he saw Emma and the kids, all of them saddened by his situation. Jonathan cried badly.